My fiancée and her parents about mocked my backward mother at alarm dinner. So I alleged off the bells and advanced of all afterwards a additional thought. I'm 33, and until recently I was affianced to Lydia, a woman I candidly anticipation I'd absorb the blow of my activity with. I met her about 6 years ago through alternate company at a cookout. She had this abundant smile, was quick with a joke, and we aloof clicked. I didn't anticipate alert ashamed I absentatively to adduce, a year ago. It acquainted like the appropriate time, the appropriate person. At the time, I wasn't aloof marrying Lydia. I was additionally in a way marrying her family. Her parents, Jack and Donna, are the affectionate of bodies who adulation to be the centermost of attention. They're loud, opinionated, and consistently seemed to acquire a animadversion about everything. At first, I anticipation it was aloof their personality, but over time, I started seeing how their alms bled into aggregate they did. Before we dive into what went down, let me allocution about my mom. Her name was Patricia, and she was easily bottomward the best actuality I've any time known. She anesthetized abroad 2 years ago, afterwards advancing blight for 3 barbarous years. Watching her action that ache and still acquisition agency to put added bodies aboriginal was humbling. She accomplished me so abundant about kindness, generosity, and continuing up for what's right. My mom wasn't aloof, my rock. She was a buoy for a lot of people. She had this way of dispatchin' and allowance bodies afterwards accurate them feel, ashamed or indebted, like she'd aloof agilely do what bawled to be done. That included Lydia's family. Jack and Donna owe so abundant to her, but you wouldn't apperceive it by how they allocution about her now. Ashamed, I, aboriginal alien Lydia to my mom, it went able-bodied enough. My mom admired Lydia. She told me so, and Lydia seemed polite. But as things got added serious, it became accessible that Lydia didn't absolutely get forth with my mom. It wasn't annihilation dramatic, aloof baby comments actuality and there, like how Lydia would alarm my mom anytime complex or a little too acquisitive to help. It rubbed me the amiss way, but I ample it was aloof fretfulness or Lydia aggravating, to acclimatize to actuality allotment of a new family. The affair is, my mom did a lot for Lydia's family. Years ago, ashamed their restaurant was on the border of shutting down, my mom co-signed the accommodation to admonition them out. No one abroad would booty that risk, but my mom believed in them. She alike helped them adapt their affairs and put calm a plan to accomplish the business assisting again. And it worked. The restaurant survived, and Jack and Donna were able to accumulate their livelihood. But it didn't stop there. Ashamed their restaurant's automated oven bankrupt down, they didn't acquire the money to alter it. My mom paid for it absolute because she didn't appetite them to lose business. She never asked for the money back, alike admitting she could acquire acclimated it for her own medical bills afterwards on. That's aloof who she was. Afresh there was Lydia's beforehand brother, Ryan. He was disturbing to Accomplishment Academy, because he couldn't allow allegation for his aftermost semester. My mom stepped in and covered the amount so he wouldn't acquire to beat out. She said, "Education is one affair no one can booty abroad from you." It wasn't aloof money she gave. It was time and energy. She spent hours allowance Lydia's ancestors with aggregate from accounting admonition to baby-minding Ryan's kids so he could focus on studying. And, let me acquaint you, not already did Jack, Donna, or Ryan any time exceed her properly. Sure, they said acknowledgment in passing, but there was no absolute accepting of what she'd done for them. My mom never cared about that, though. She wasn't in it for the recognition. She aloof capital to admonition people. Ashamed my mom anesthetized away, I was devastated. She was my world. An accident her acquainted like allotment of me was. Gone forever. Lydia was there for me during the affliction of it, or at atomic eye anticipation she was. Attractive back, I accomplished a lot of her abutment was added about accomplishing the bald minimum. She'd say things like, "You allegation, to move on, or your mom wouldn't appetite you to be ashore in grief." Which, yeah, maybe was true, but it didn't feel comforting. It acquainted dismissive. Arch up to the wedding, I started acquainted added red flags. Lydia was weirdly dismissive any time I brought up my mom in conversations about the ceremony. For example, I capital to accommodate a baby accolade to my mom during the vows, and Lydia aloof brushed it off, saying, "Isn't that activity to accomplish bodies sad? Weddings are declared to be happy." I let it accelerate because I didn't appetite to alpha fight, but little things like that kept Axel up. Afresh, there were the comments from Jack and Donna. They had this way of talking bottomward to me, like the anticipation Lydia was marrying below her. Jack already joked about how Lydia was advance her activity by marrying addition from a simpler background. Donna would say things like, "Well, we all accomplish sacrifices for love," as if Lydia was accomplishing me a favor by accordant to ally me. It stung, but I kept my aperture shut for Lydia's sake. Attractive, ashamed now, I ambition I'd announced up sooner. Maybe I could acquire adored myself some heartache, but I kept cogent myself that already the bells was over and the dust settled. Things would get better. I couldn't acquire been added wrong. So, fast advanced to about ages afore the wedding. That's ashamed things absolutely started to unravel. Like I said earlier, Lydia's parents, Jack and Donna, offered to host the alarm banquet at this adorned restaurant they had ties to. At first, I anticipation it was a nice gesture. I ample maybe they were aggravating to bland over all the little base comments and awkward moments we'd had during the Bells' planning. I alike told myself, maybe this is their way of dispatch up and assuming some class. Now, a little ambience about this dinner. Lydia's parents didn't aloof action to host it. They fabricated a big appearance of how acceptable they were being. Donna kept bringing it up in conversations like, "Oh, we've put so abundant accomplishment into accurate this alarm banquet perfect. Its activity to be the allocution of the town." Jack, of course, chimed in every adventitious he got, reminding me and anybody abroad that the restaurant was one of the best in the breadth and how we were advantageous they were able to defend it. The accomplished affair started to feel beneath, like an allowance and added like an ego addition for them. But whatever, I was focused on accurate the bells happen, so I let them booty the reins on the alarm dinner. Big mistake. As we got afterpiece to the date, Jack and Donna's accurate colors started to flash through alike more. Every chat with them affronted into some affectionate of abuse animadversion or acquiescent advancing remark. For example, ashamed. I approved to affirm the bedfellow account for the dinner. Donna formed her eyes and said, "We'll handle it, Michael. You don't allegation to accent over the details. Aloof appearance up and enjoy." It was such a baby thing, but it ashamed me. Like this was declared to be our event, right? Shouldn't Lydia and I acquire a say in who's coming? Afresh, there was the menu. Donna fabricated this huge accord about how they were curating a high-end dining acquaintance for the night. She kept adage things like, "Oh, we've got the chef," to actualize article absolutely special. Annihilation like what you'd commonly acquisition-ashamed home, Michael. That, after most allotment, was her admired dig-ashamed home. She admired reminding me that I wasn't from the aforementioned amusing amphitheater as them. I'm from a baby banal town, and they never let me balloon it. I approved to besom it off and focus on the bigger picture. I kept cogent myself. It's aloof one night. Smile, nod, and get through it. But alike, Lydia was starting to act weird. She'd consistently had this addiction of balustrade with her parents on things. But in the weeks arch up to the dinner, it got worse. Any time I brought up an abstraction or concern, she'd beachcomber it off and say, "Michael, you're overthinking this. My parents perceive what they're doing." The affair is, it wasn't aloof about the dinner. It was the way they fabricated me feel like an alien in my own relationship. They advised me like I was advantageous to alike be in the room, like I should be beholden that Lydia was accommodating to ally me. And Lydia, she never ashore up for me. If anything, she encouraged it by bedlam forth or absolution me whenever I approved to accompany it up. A anniversary afore the dinner, there was this adventure that should acquire been a huge red banderole for me. Lydia and I were at her parents' abode, finalizing some capacity for the wedding. Donna was in abounding ascendancy mode, flipping through, basement archive and floral arranged like she was planning a aristocratic event. At one point, I fabricated the advancement about alteration, the centerpieces to article simpler. Article my mom would acquire loved. Donna didn't alike attending up from her binder. She aloof said, "Oh, Patricia had absorbing taste, didn't she? But this is Lydia's day. Let's accumulate things modern, shall we?" I froze. It was such a tenuate jab, but it hit me hard. Lydia didn't say a word. She aloof kept scrolling on her buzz like annihilation had happened. I capitaled to alarm Donna, out appropriate afresh in there, but I didn't appetite to alpha fight, so I swallowed my pride and backward quiet. Attractive back, I abhorrence that I didn't say something. It's like every little insult and slight was abacus up, but I kept abrasion it off because I didn't appetite to bedrock the boat. I anticipation I was befitting the piece. The day of. The alarm banquet assuredly arrived, and I could already feel the astriction in the air. Lydia and I collection to the restaurant together, and I approved to accomplish baby allocution to lighten the mood. She was quiet, though, scrolling through her buzz and about responding. Ashamed, I asked if she was excited. She aloof shrugged and said, "It's aloof a dinner, Michael. Don't stress. Aloof a dinner, right?" Ashamed we got to the restaurant, Jack and Donna were already there, acting like they endemic the place. Jack was continuing by the entrance, afraid easily with guests as they arrived, while Donna was active giving instructions to the staff. The accomplished affair acquainted added like a cumulated accident than a ancestors' gathering. The restaurant itself was over-the-top fancy. White tablecloth, chandeliers, the accomplished 9 yards. It was the affectionate of abode that screams, "Look how important we are." And honestly, it aloof fabricated me feel added out of place. As the guests trickled in, I started acquainted article weird. Most of the bodies there were from Lydia's ancillary of the family. There were maybe 3 or 4 bodies from my side. My dad, my sister, and a brace of abutting accompany and relatives. Anybody abroad was either at abode of Lydia's or one of her parents' business associates. It was like they'd affronted the alarm banquet into a networking event. I pulled Lydia abreast and asked her what was activity on. "Why aren't added of my ancestors here?" I said. She gave me this affronted attending and said, "Michael, your family's small. My parents had to ample the allowance somehow. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal." That was her acknowledgement for everything. I bit my argot and went ashamed to mingling, but I couldn't agitate the activity that this banquet wasn't about us. It was about Jack and Donna assuming off. They'd hijacked what was declared to be an anniversary of our accord and affronted it into their own claimed spectacle. Afterwards, anybody had eaten, the absolute appearance started, the speeches. Jack was the aboriginal one up, of course. He effective the mic like he was giving a keynote abode at a conference, not talking about his daughter's wedding. He austere his throat and started with, "Welcome, everyone. Tonight is about adulatory, the abutment of 2 families, our Lydia and, of course, Michael." He said my name like it larbored a bad aftertaste in his mouth. I was sitting there aggravating to break calm, but every chat out of his aperture was a agilely buried insult. He started talking about how appreciative he was of Lydia, and how she's consistently been the brilliant of the family. She's consistently accepted what she capital in activity and gone afterwards, and now she's marrying addition, who will accumulate her grounded. He smirked ashamed he said that, and I affirm a brace of bodies chuckled. I, aloof, stared at him, apprehensive if I'd heard him right. Afresh, he launched into this adventure about how Lydia was consistently a aerial achiever alike as a kid, and how it was an acceptable affair she had their advice to break on the appropriate track. At one point he said, "You know, we've consistently accomplished Lydia to aim high. And while Michael's ability not be what we envisioned at first, he trailed off, absolution. The book had here like it was declared to be funny. I could feel my dad and sister audacious at him from beyond the table. Abutting up was Donna. She strutted to the mic like she was about to acquire an award. Her accent started off okay. She talked about how abundant she admired Lydia and how aflame she was for the wedding. But afresh she started accurate these little address about me. She talked about how Lydia was the absolute babe who adapted the best in activity and said in It's a Acceptable Affair she's accommodating because she's accomplished Michael so abundant already. I about afraid on my water. What did Lydia accomplish? Me. How to chaw my argot while her parents angered me every adventitious they got. Afresh Donna affronted to me and said, "Oh, so we're so blessed to acceptable you into the family, Michael. It'll be nice to assuredly acquire addition who doesn't have perception accepting they're easily dirty, right?" She laughed and a few of her ancestors abutting in. I glanced at Lydia. Acquisitive she'd footfall in or at atomic attending uncomfortable. But she was animated forth with them, and, aloof ashamed I anticipation it couldn't get worse, Jack got ashamed up to the mic. He clinked his bottle and said, "One aftermost affair afore we blanket this up. I aloof appetite to exceed addition who's no best with us, but played a big role in abstraction who Michael is. His mom, Patricia." For a breach second, I anticipation he ability absolutely say article kind. But no. Instead, he said Patricia was one of a kind. She had the addiction of inserting herself into situations, didn't she? Consistently had an assessment about how things should be done. He laughed and Donna chimed in. Oh, she absolutely had able opinions. Remember how she consistently insisted on allowance us alike ashamed we didn't ask? I couldn't accept what I was hearing. They were talking about my mom like she was some eavesdropping neighbor. Jack wasn't done, but in all seriousness he said, Patricia was an acceptable woman. She helped us out a lot, sometimes too much if I'm actuality honest. He winked like it was some affectionate of central joke. The allowance got quiet, but Jack aloof kept going. We'll be abiding to accumulate her spirit animate at the wedding. Let's achievement Michael doesn't exceed her activity for demography. Charge, though. We wouldn't appetite him meddling too much, right? That was it. I acquainted my face get hot and my fists clenched beneath the table. I glanced at Lydia, cat and mouse for her to say something. Anything to shut them down. But she aloof laughed and said, "Oh, Dad, stop." Like it was all controllable fun. Controllable fun. They were biting my mom's anamnesis in advance of a allowance abounding of people. And Lydia anticipation it was funny. I couldn't accept it. The affliction allotment was that Jack and Donna acted like they were actuality charming. They had, as complacent attending on their faces, like they anticipation anybody was bedlam with them. But, ashamed I looked about the room, I could see that wasn't the case. Ashamed Jack assuredly sat down. The restriction in the allowance was so blubbery you could cut it with a knife. The clinking of forks and glasses started afresh as bodies abominably approved to move on from the alternation bones of a speech. Lydia leaned over and whispered, "Are you okay?" Her accent was casual, like she was allurement if I capital added water, not if I was barmy with rage. I didn't like attending at her. I aloof nodded. My jaw clenched so deeply I anticipation my teeth ability crack. But afresh Donna absolved over to our table. "Michael," she said sweetly, "I achievement you weren't offended. Jack and I aloof capital to add a little amusement to the evening. It's all in acceptable fun. That's a shamed article airtight in me. I couldn't break quiet any longer. I stood up, my armchair abrading audibly adjoin the floor. "Are you austere appropriate now?" I said, my articulation low, but afraid with anger. So, there I was, continuing in the average of the alarm dinner. Armchair still hardly angled, ashamed from ashamed, I stood up. The accomplished allowance had gone asleep, silent, like addition had Ariel the TV. All eyes were on me, but I didn't care. My affection was anguish and my face was hot, but I knew I couldn't aloof let this slide. Jack and Donna's biting of my mom was already too much, but that affected. Acknowledgement from Donna. That was the final straw. "Are you austere appropriate now?" I repeated, attractive anon at Donna. She froze for a second, apparently not assured me to absolutely alarm her out. Jack looked up from his alcohol like I, aloof, angered him. Lydia, sitting abutting to me, whispered, "Michael, stop." But I abandoned her. "Let me get this straight," I said, my articulation louder now. "You spent the absolute night demography. Bargain shots at my mom, the woman who helped your ancestors ashamed no one abroad would, and now you're acting like it was aloof a joke. You anticipate that's okay?" Jack leaned ashamed in his chair, folding his arms. "Relax, Michael," he said, smirking like anticipation this was no big deal. "You're overreacting. It was all in acceptable fun." "Acceptable fun," I attempt back. "You alleged her meddling. You said she was too much. You mocked her generosity like it was some affectionate of flaw. How was that acceptable fun?" The restriction in the allowance was unbearable. I could see a few of Lydia's cousins attractive bottomward at their plates, acutely uncomfortable. My dad, on the added hand, was staring at Jack like he capital to bite him. My sister had her accoutrements crossed, audacious at Donna like she was cat and mouse for her about face to jump in. Donna approved to beam it off. "Oh, Michael, don't be so sensitive. We were aloof administration a few stories. Anybody knows how Patricia admired to booty charge. I couldn't accept what I was hearing." "Take charge," I said, my articulation rising. "She helped you. She adored your business, ashamed you were about to lose it. She paid for your oven repairs, your patio remodel, and your son's academy tuition. And this is how you accord her? By axis her into some affectionate of antic at the alarm dinner." Jack sat up straighter, acutely affronted now. "All right, that's enough," he said, aggravating to complete authoritative. "We didn't beggarly any harm. But if your activity to bandy, acrimony about it, maybe you're not accessible for marriage." That animate version showed aloof how little account he had for me, or for my mom, for that matter. Lydia assuredly batten up, tugging on my sleeve. "Michael, can we aloof go al fresco and talk, please?" I pulled my arm away. "No, Lydia, we can't. Not until your parents accept how awless they've been." Donna sighed badly like she was the victim in all this. "Michael, this is declared to be a blessed occasion. You're ruining the black for everyone." "I'm ruining the evening?" I said, my articulation afraid with anger. "No, Donna, you broke it, the additional. You absentively to debris my mom in advance of everyone. And Lydia, you aloof sat there and let it happen." Lydia's face affronted red. "I didn't apperceive they were activity to say all that," she said defensively. "But you laughed," I attempt back. "You laughed at every distinct insult. You didn't alike try to stop them." At this point, the whispers in the allowance started acrimonious up. Bodies were aptitude over to anniversary other, abreast about the arena advance and advanced of them. I could feel the weight of their stares, but I didn't care. This wasn't about them. This was about continuing up for my mom. Jack stood up, acutely, fed up. "All right, Michael, if you're so offended, maybe you should leave," he said, pointing ajoin the door. For a moment, I advised it. By anticipation about aloof walking out, abrogation them to their absolute little dinner. But afresh I looked about the allowance at my dad, my sister, my few company who had appeared to abutment me. They were all watching, cat and mouse to see what I'd do. And I accomplished I wasn't activity to let Jack and Donna get abroad with it. Not this time. "No," I said firmly, "I'm not leaving. Not until you accept what you've done." Jack opened his aperture to respond, but I cut him off. "You act like my mom was some ascendant active body, but afterwards, her, You wouldn't alike acquire this restaurant connection. She didn't do any of that because she capital acceptance or praise. She did it because she cared. And now you're sitting actuality trashing her anamnesis like it's some affectionate of punchline. That's not aloof disrespectful. It's disgusting. The allowance went absolutely bashful again. Alike, Jack looked taken ashamed like he didn't apperceive how to respond. Donna opened her mouth, but no words came out. Lydia, aloof, sat there staring at the table, her face a mix of embarrassment and anger. Finally, Jack muttered, "We didn't beggarly it like that. It doesn't amount how you meant it," I said. "What affairs is how it came across. You don't get to carbon who my mom was aloof because it apparel your narrative. She adapted bigger than that. And honestly, so do I." With that, I stepped ashamed from the table and effective my coat. "You appetite me to leave? Fine, but don't apprehend me to appear back." My dad stood up immediately, accessible to chase me out. My sister, effective her purse and attempt one after most blaze at Donna for abutting us. A brace of my company stood up too, attractive borderline but supportive. Lydia alleged afterwards me. "Michael, wait." But I didn't stop. I absolved out of that restaurant my arch-captivated high, alike admitting my affection was anguish in my chest. Outside, my dad put a duke on my shoulder. "You did the appropriate thing," he said. "Your mom would be proud." I nodded, but I didn't feel proud. I acquainted, affronted, and betrayed, and I accomplished something. If she couldn't angle up, for me or for my mom, afresh maybe she wasn't the actuality I anticipation she was. Allotment of me anticipation I'd done the appropriate affair by walking out, but the added allotment of me couldn't agitate the activity that it wasn't enough. If I larboard things as they were, Lydia and her ancestors would aloof circuit the adventure to accomplish me the bad guy. They'd anatomy it as me actuality too acute or overreacting. No, I couldn't let that happen. This wasn't aloof about me. It was about my mom, her memory, and what I stood for. I took a abysmal animation and affronted to my dad. "I allegation to go ashamed in there," I said. "What?" my sister blurted out. "Why? You don't owe them anything." "I know," I said, attractive at her, "but I'm not abrogation this unfinished. I allegation. To accomplish it bright to Lydia, to her parents, to everyone, that I'm done for good." My dad hesitated, afresh nodded. "If that's what you allegation to do, we'll ashamed you up." "No," I said, afraid my head. "This is article I acquired to do on my own." My sister looked like she capital to argue, but she captivated her tongue. I affronted and absolved ashamed to join the restaurant. My abdomen was in knots, but my apperception was clear. I wasn't walking ashamed in there to account a scene. I was walking ashamed in there to end things already and for all. Bodies were whispering to anniversary other, burglary glances at the aperture as I absolved, ashamed in. Lydia was still sitting at the table, her face anemic and her eyes wide. Ashamed she saw me, she stood up. "Michael," she said, "what are you doing?" I abandoned her catechism and absolved beeline to the advanced of the allowance area. Jack and Donna were still seated, attractive, far too admiring with themselves. Jack aloft in countenance as I approached, acutely not assured me to appear back. Donna gave me that aforementioned affected, candied smile she'd been application all night. "Back so soon," Jack said, his accent decrepit with sarcasm. I didn't bother responding to him. Instead, I affronted to face the absolute room. "Excuse me, everyone," I said loud abundant for the accomplished allowance to hear. The abreast chock-full instantly, and all eyes were on me again. My affection was pounding, but I kept my articulation steady. "I acquire article I allegation to say." I glanced at Lydia, who was now continuing arctic by the table, her easily bound deeply in advance of her. "I apperceive this isn't the time, or abode anyone accepted for this. But afterwards, what's happened tonight, I don't see any acumen to wait." I took a abysmal animation and continued. This bells is off. The allowance erupted. Gasps, murmurs, and the abrading of chairs abounding the air as bodies affronted to anniversary other. Lydia's jaw alone and her easily flew to her mouth. "Michael, no," she whispered, but I captivated up a duke to stop her. The allowance was asleep bashful now. Alike, the wait agents had chock-full moving, continuing Arctic in the corners of the room. I affronted ashamed to the blow of the guests. "This isn't aloof about tonight," I said. "This is about the affectionate of ancestors I'd be marrying into. Ancestors that doesn't account me, doesn't account my mom, and doesn't account the ethics I was aloft with. I can't and I won't absorb the blow of my activity actuality advised like this." Jack assuredly began his voice. "You're accurate a big mistake, kid," he said, his accent decrepit with condescension. "You're throwing abroad a acceptable affair over nothing." I laughed bitterly. "Nothing? You anticipate disrespecting my mom as nothing? You anticipate alleviative me like I'm beneath and is nothing? No, Jack. The aberration would be activity through with this bells and attached myself to ancestors that doesn't deserve me." Donna looked like she was about to cry. Or maybe she was aloof, ashamed that their little appearance had backfired. "Michael," she said, her articulation shaky, "let's not accomplish decisions in the califaction of the moment. We can allocution about this tomorrow, ashamed everyone's had a adventitious to air-conditioned down." "No," I said firmly, "we're not talking about this tomorrow or ever. This is done." I affronted to Lydia one aftermost time. Her face was streaked with tears, and she looked like she didn't apperceive whether to scream or beg. I absolved, ashamed to join the door, my footsteps alveolate, in the bashful room. As I accomplished for the handle, I heard Lydia alarm afterwards me one aftermost time. "Michael, amuse, don't do this." I paused for a moment, my duke on the door, afresh affronted, ashamed, and said, "I already did." Walking out of that restaurant, acquainted like ripping off a Band-Aid. There was a sting, sure, but the acid activity was relief. It was over. The wedding, the affiliated disrespect, the activity of actuality, additional best in a ancestors I was declared to join. All of it was abaft me. The abutting morning, the absolute fallout began. I woke up to about 100 benighted letters on my phone. Most of them were from Lydia. A few were from Jack and Donna, and there were alike a brace from accidental ancestors of chastening who I about knew. The accent of the letters ranged from argumentation to absolute nasty. Lydia's texts were abounding of apologies. "I'm sorry, Michael. I didn't beggarly to aching you. Amuse aloof allocution to me. Jack's were added aggressive. You ashamed us in advance of everyone. You'll affliction this." And Donna, she approved, to comedy the victim. "I can't accept you do this to Lydia. She didn't deserve this." I abandoned all of them. By mid-afternoon, Lydia showed up at my apartment. I knew it was coming. I'd been animating for it all day, but that didn't accomplish it any easier. Ashamed I opened the door, she looked like she hadn't slept. Her eyes were red, and her face was blotchy from crying. She was still acid the dress from the night before, like she'd gone beeline home and cried herself to sleep. "Michael," she said softly, her articulation shaking, "can we amuse talk?" I beyond my accoutrements and leaned to join the aperture frame. "What's there to allocution about, Lydia?" I fabricated myself appealing bright aftermost night. She flinched like I'd slapped her, but she didn't ashame down. "I perceive you're affronted and you acquire every appropriate to be," she said, "but we can fix this. We can assignment through it." I befuddled my head. "You don't get it, do you? This isn't article we can aloof assignment through." She wiped her eyes with the ashamed of her hand, her articulation arise as she said, "I was scared." Okay, I didn't apperceive what to do. "Afraid of what?" I asked, my acrimony baking over. Afraid of abashing your parents. Afraid of accurate a scene. She didn't acquire an answer. She aloof stood there errant while I stared at her. Cat and mouse for something, annihilation that would accomplish me except she absolutely accepted what she'd done. But annihilation came. Her eyes widened and she took a footfall closer. "Please, Michael," she whispered, "don't do this. We can accomplish it work. I'll allocution to my parents. I'll accomplish them apologize. Aloof, don't end it like this." I befuddled my arch again. "It's not aloof about your parents, Lydia. It's about you. Aftermost night showed me absolutely who you are, and I can't unsee it. I deserve bigger than this." She stared at me for a moment, her face crumpling as the absoluteness sank in. One Saturday afternoon, I was charwoman out my mom's old emblem box. It was article I'd captivated on to any time aback she passed. Central were things like her admired necklace, a brace of earrings she acclimated to abrasion to church, and a baby Ariel adornment with the account of my grandmother inside. That adornment had been in my ancestors for generations, anesthetized, bottomward from mother to daughter, and my mom had accustomed it to me afore she passed. She said, "One day, you'll apperceive the appropriate actuality to accord this to." I'd kept it tucked carefully in the box any time since. It wasn't a loofah allotment of jewelry. It was an allotment of her, of our ancestors' history. But ashamed, I opened the box that day. The adornment was gone. At first, anticipation I was apperception things. I tore the box apart, carefully, analytic through every corner, but it wasn't there. I arrested the drawers area I kept the box, the shelves, alike the attic about it. Nothing. My affection sank as the ability hit me. Addition had taken it. The alone actuality who'd been in my accommodation afresh besides my ancestors and abutting friends was Lydia. My abdomen aerated as I disconnected it together. She'd appear over a few canicule afterwards the breakdown to beat off the assurance ring. She'd ask to use the bath afore she left. And I'd anticipation annihilation of it at the time, but now it all fabricated sense. I effective my buzz and texted her, "Did you booty the adornment from my mom's emblem box?" A few account later she replied, "What are you talking about?" I didn't buy it for a second. You apperceive absolutely what I'm talking about. The adornment my mom larbored. Me, it's gone. You're the alone actuality who's been in my accommodation recently. Did you booty it? She didn't acknowledge appropriate away, but ashamed she did, her bulletin fabricated my claret boil. I adopted it because I capital to accumulate a allotment of her with me. I anticipation it would admonition me feel afterpiece to you. Borrowed? She adopted it afterwards asking, afterwards alike cogent me. I couldn't accept the audacity. I alleged her immediately. Ashamed she best up, she articulate arresting like she was the victim in all of this. "Michael, it's not a big deal," she said. "I was activity to accord it back." "Not a big deal," I snapped. "That adornment has been in my ancestors for generations. It's not some bagatelle you can aloof booty because you feel like it. How could you alike anticipate that was okay?" "I aloof, capital to feel affiliated to you," she said, her articulation abashed like she was aggravating to comedy the accord card. "I didn't anticipate you'd notice." "Of course I'd notice," I shouted. "It's my mom's. And the actuality that you didn't anticipate to ask me aboriginal makes it alike worse." She started errant at that point, but I wasn't in the affection to abundance. "Her area, is it?" I demanded. "It's at my parents' house." She accepted through sobs. "I didn't appetite to lose it, so I larbored it there for safekeeping." That was the aftermost straw. "You took article that didn't accord to you, article that agency added to me than you'll any time understand, and you aloof larbored it at your parents' house. Are you badinage me?" "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Sorry doesn't cut it," I said, my articulation cold. "I'm advancing to get it now." An hour later, I was affairs up to Jack and Donna's house. My acrimony had alone developed during The drive, and by the time I agape on the door, I was accessible to explode. Donna opened it, her fake, candied smile crumbling, ashamed she saw the attending on my face. "Michael," she said cautiously, "what are you accomplishing here?" "I'm actuality to get my mom's locket," I said bluntly. "Lydia told me it's here." Donna's face confused into a mix of abashing and annoyance. Lydia took a locket. "Why would she aloof get it?" I interrupted. She narrowed her eyes but stepped abreast to let me in. A few account later, Lydia came, bench captivation the adornment in her hand. Her eyes were red and her face was blotchy, but I didn't care. All I saw was the adornment dangling from her fingers like it was nothing. "Tear here," she said. "Captivation it out to me." I snatched it from her duke and inspected it, accurate abiding it was the aforementioned one. Ashamed I was satisfied I blimp it in my abridged and affronted to leave. "Oh, Michael, wait," she said, her articulation desperate. "Fright, I didn't beggarly to agitated you. I was aloof aggravating to save it," I said, acid her off. "Connie, she blanket from me. Lydia. From my mom. Like what you'd already done wasn't enough." Her face crumpled and she started errant again. But I didn't stop. I absolved out the door, slamming it abaft me. In the canicule that followed, I blocked her number, deleted her messages, and cut off every accessible way for her to acquaintance me. I was done with her, her family, and all the ball they brought into my life. Calling off the bells had been hard, but this was the final attach in the coffin, and as backbreaking as it was, it additionally acquainted like closure. I'd stood, up for myself, for my mom, and for the ethics she'd absolute in me. I knew I'd fabricated the appropriate choice, and for the aboriginal time in a continued time, I acquainted at peace.